we go. All right, good people. So we need to talk 23 is back. And the person that I have on the show tonight is going to be my first guest for the month of March, which is Women's National Women's Month. And with me tonight is the founder and CEO of WOWD Wellness Center.
Close. WOWD Center for Wellness.
Okay, I got it all mixed up.
Okay.
Alessandra Poroj, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so as I do with all of my guests when they come on here, um, for the people that may not know you, if someone were to ask you who is Alessandra, how would you describe yourself?
Hmm. Who is Alessandra? Alessandra is a woman who loves deeply and loves passionately, who is passionate about the work that she does. Alessandra is a woman who is very much family oriented, who believes in the power of women, who believes in the power of humanity. I believe in justice. I believe in doing the right thing. I believe in serving people. I believe in I am my sister's keeper. I am my brother's keeper. And I believe that there is a force that's greater than us. And that force I choose to believe in is God. And that envelops everything that I do and who I am as a person.
Okay, so with all that being said, I'm going to go back a little bit. So when all of the presidential race, after everything went down and everything, to see that Kamala Harris was going to be the first um, female vice president ever. What was that feeling like to you?
It was a pretty awesome feeling. It was surreal. It was like, is this really happening? I found myself praying for her safety
Mhm.
and kind of feeling like, okay, now I'm part of the crew that has to take up the mantle to keep her prayed up, keep her protected in thought and in spirit. And it was very empowering. She graduated from an HBCU. I graduated from an HBCU. I went to Xavier University of Louisiana. She and I are members of the same great illustrious sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. So having two commonalities with her,
Mhm.
it certainly made me feel much more connected to the idea of I can do it too. And though that is not something that I aspire to do, it's just that, you know what? We can still keep doing some things. We can still keep doing some amazing things. We still have more ceilings to shatter. It's
Mhm.
unfortunate that we are still having to work to shatter so many ceilings still in 2021,
Mhm.
but that is the fact of the matter. And so I was extremely proud, extremely proud. I mean, I had tears in my eyes. I was smiling. I mean, it was just like, she could have been my own sister. I was so happy and excited.
Yeah. So do you, let me see how to phrase this question. So as a woman, did you feel more, I'm trying to say, sense of pride for you, or I mean for women of less of our generation, or did you see it as more of an accomplishment that the young women coming up now get to see someone that looks like them, make it to such a high position, not the highest position, and not saying that she's done by any stretch of the imagination,
Mhm.
but do you think it was more, did you feel more excited for you or for the young women coming up now, being because they see so many negative images of women and black women especially? did what was that feeling like for you? Was it a great feeling for you, or did you feel more of a sense of, I don't know, enjoyment or pride for the young women coming up?
I would say both. For me as an individual, I
Mhm.
felt I was excited to see me and her,
Okay.
right? But I was also excited for the young women coming up. And I'm also excited for both of my grandmothers. I'm fortunate that both of my grandmothers are still living. One is 95, I think she is,
Mhm.
and one is 98. So the fact that they get to see this amazing woman come into this position, I was excited and happy for them. You know, they were born in the early 20s,
Mhm.
the 1900s, you know, and so they're both almost a century old. Just as surprised and amazed that we were when President Obama was elected, it's
Mhm.
the same kind of amazement, and there's the same level of pride. And you know, I think it's just it never gets old, it
Yeah.
never gets tired. And I think that there are pieces for each of us, for men and women.
Mhm.
And you know, I think it just is such an empowering opportunity for us.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, I think that's great, and I think that this generation, males and females, I think that they have a lot to look forward to. I mean, I'm not sure what it was like when, my mother was growing up or anything, but the fact that my kids, got to see President Obama, the first
Mhm.
Black president, and now they get to see, the first Black female vice president. And I know she's multi-race, but
Mhm.
get to see somebody that looks like their mother, their grandmother, aunts, and things like that.
Yeah.
I think this generation, has a lot to be proud of, and for the young women, I don't want to just say the Black young women. I mean, I think women as a whole get to see something like that, happen during their lifetime. So my next question for you would be, so when you went to college, what was your major in college?
Ha. So when I started at Xavier, I actually went to Xavier in the fall of 93. And the reason that I went to Xavier is because they had just surpassed Howard with respect to the number of Black students that they were getting into med school. So I was going there because I was going to become a doctor. And after my first year, I came home. My dad worked in pharmacy. I came home, I worked with him, and there was this young, really smart and sharp Black woman pharmacist that I had the opportunity to work with. And I spent a fair amount of time with her, and we talked and we talked and we talked. And when I went back to school for my sophomore year, I changed my major to pharmacy, and never looked back. It's interesting because I am not really comfortable around the idea of cutting people open and doing that kind of thing. But the whole reason I wanted to be a doctor is because I wanted to help people. I wanted to serve. And even though I knew what my dad did, I was one of those kids who didn't want to be what my parents were. I wanted to do something different.
Mm.
And lo and behold, I ended up following in my father's footsteps. So I went to Xavier. Fortunately, Xavier had a college of pharmacy. And so I transitioned into pre-pharm, and I graduated through the 6-year program, and I got my doctorate of pharmacy from Xavier.
And then, and once you got into it, did it fulfill the purpose? The reason that you started it, did it fulfill that purpose, or did you feel like there was more that you wanted to do or accomplish as far as that went?
So when I started, I really believed and I felt, and I know still to this day, that I was accomplishing that purpose of serving. Um, my path, my journey in pharmacy was very different from what I thought it would be. When I was in my final year of school, I thought that I was going to work in the community setting in ambulatory clinics, helping Black people in particular
Mhm.
manage and deal with and prevent things like diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. And that was the way in which I was going to function as a pharmacist. And I applied for a residency in, I think it was Kansas City, Missouri, and I didn't match. And so I came home, I started working in retail for a minute. And then I received in the mail, back in the day when we got mail and there was important information in the mail, a letter about an opportunity for a residency at the University of Maryland, the School of Pharmacy in Baltimore, for a palliative care residency.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have any idea what palliative care was, but I was like, what I do know is I don't want to work in retail. So I went, I interviewed, I got the position, and I fell in love with end of life care. I am one of those people who finds it easy. And when I say easy, I don't mean like, oh, I take death lightly,
Mm-hmm.
but I have a peace being around death and dying. It's not something that's scary to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that I find to be a very natural part of living, which is dying. And I feel greatly empowered to be able to help people navigate through the difficulty of terminal illness. And my role in particular was to help nurses, help doctors figure out the cocktail that would allow people to be comfortable so that they could do the really important things, right?
Okay.
So that they're not sitting there just in pain, but they could be able to enjoy a meal, whether they were physically eating or not, but that they could be present with their family. If
Okay.
there was a trip that they wanted to take, their symptoms were managed so that they were able to do so. But also discerning at times that, you know what, it's not the physical thing really that's manifesting. There's some spiritual and emotional stuff that's showing up in the physical body.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was while I was working in end of life care that I actually received my call to ministry. And I left briefly. I went to Howard School of Divinity. And after I left there, I went back into end of life care, and I was working in ministry and doing a multitude of things, serving still at the center of what I was doing, and felt very fulfilled for a long time in pharmacy until I wasn't.
And what was that? And what gave you that feeling where you weren't, or what was it that gave you that feeling of not feeling fulfilled anymore in pharmacy?
I had shifted out of end of life care and I went into a completely administrative role
Mm-hmm.
in long-term care pharmacy. And for a while it was fulfilling. I still felt like I was walking and calling and in purpose. And then I was at a level where I was privy to see things that did not make me happy, that angered me, from the ways in which big corporations or the corporation that I worked for and other large corporations valued or didn't value employees, um, the ways in which I saw myself burning out. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
was working 16, 17-hour days back to back to back,
Wow.
7 days straight. And it was overwhelming. I had my very first panic attack.
Okay.
And this is not the life God intended for Alessandra Damaris. Not at all. And then just, as I kind of sat back and was watching, I did not like what I was seeing with Big Pharma. I did not like watching big corporations making money off of sick people. And because my job is not that, my job is to
Mm-hmm.
help people to get better. But then also along with that was the idea of really connecting with the thought that there's got to be another way that we take care of ourselves
Okay.
outside of waiting until we get sick and then people are just taking medicine, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a level of responsibility that has to occur, and ownership and honor for our personal temples, so that we there's a role for medicine, but it shouldn't be the primary go-to. And so there was just this there were a multitude of things that kind of happened and snowballed all at one time for me. But at the same time, I had to figure it out, because it wasn't like there was this light bulb moment. I was like, okay, I'm leaving here and this is what I'm going to do next. it was very much the journey for me to figure out, to explore, and to determine what the next steps would be.
Yeah, but no, I'm willing to say that I'm sure that you, now looking back at it, appreciated the journey.
Oh, yeah,
It was,
absolutely.
I'm sure it wasn't a
Absolutely.
journey to where it was like, oh, why me, or woe was me. As once you came out of it, it was like, okay, now I see why I had to go through, what I had to go through to get to where I am. So during that transition period, was your faith ever tested, or did you use your faith to sort of keep you grounded and keep you from from straying, I guess, not straying, but I guess losing it, dealing with the business side of your area of expertise?
It was definitely tested. It was challenged. It was stretched in many ways. There were times that I was like, this, F this. This is crazy and ridiculous. And but there was a lot of growth. There was a lot of development. There was a lot of really learning how to center in
Mhm.
and connect with spirit. Um, and would I do it over again? No. Do I wish it could have been still a little easier? Yeah,
Mhm.
I do. Um, but it is what it is. And the lessons that I learned and that I continue to learn from my experiences are many. There's only really one portion of my pharmacy career where I was just like, yeah, this part was the toughest.
Mhm.
Right, dealing with death and dying. There were tough moments, but those were really more pullings of the heart, right? When I had to watch people die alone because, for whatever reason, there were breaks in the family, or there was strife in the family, or the few occasions where no matter what we did, we couldn't get somebody comfortable in their dying. Um,
Mhm.
and that made it hard. That's a very different thing from that kind of the moral and ethical issues surrounded by
Mhm.
business,
Mhm.
and large businesses.
So, yeah, so dealing with all of that, what did you do to, outside of praying and praying or meditating, whatever the case, whatever you may have done at that time? What are some other things that you did to kind of keep yourself you know, from just falling apart emotionally, mentally? What are some things that you did to kind of keep yourself sane at that time?
Excuse me. So you're talking about in the latter portion of my career.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
so I had actually started working out, and I was doing some stuff on my own. I wasn't seeing the results that I wanted, so I eventually hired a personal trainer, and I would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, be out the house by 4:30, I think. Or no, I'd be out the house by 5 o'clock. I'd be up at 4:30, out the house by 5 o'clock because she was in Northeast.
Okay.
And I would train with her 3 times a week. And I did this every week consistently for many months. And that was significant for me because it helped me to be able to relieve stress. It gave me purpose in the morning, and something to look forward to. It helped me to create more consistency with sleep time because I could not lift weights with only 3 or 4 hours of sleep. Those
Mhm.
weights would have just fallen on me because I wouldn't have the energy to do it.
Yeah.
So that became very important to me. And as I was working out, I wanted to get the results, so I had to eat better.
Mhm.
And so it helped me to shift my intake again. And so that was very helpful. My family was a tremendous support. I was with your good friend Carlos at that point,
Mhm.
and he was an amazing support for me as well. And so, wanting to be able to spend quality time with family and friends, and with my now husband, all of those things were important to me. And so all of those things helped me to keep a level of sanity, a level of groundedness, reminded me of purpose and calling, so that I didn't just crumble under the weight of everything that was happening at the job.
Brings us into our next thing. So tell us about I'll just stick to WOWD so I don't mess up the name again. So where did what was the thinking initially behind WOWD when you were starting out?
Sure. So I left full-time pharmacy in August of 2017. It's funny because Carlos and I were just talking about this the other day. He and I got married in April of 2017. I turned in my resignation of May of 2017, and I resigned in August of 2017. And I had no clue what I wanted to do. I just knew that I needed out. I knew that I needed to maintain my sanity. I knew that I did not want to have another panic attack. I knew that I didn't want to have a heart attack because of stress. I knew that I wanted to be able to enjoy my marriage, and be fully present with people when I sat with them. Because historically, what would happen would be I had my personal phone and I had my work phone. Well, my work phone is what was usually in my hands. And just like you and I are having a conversation now, I usually would be looking down at my phone, looking at emails, checking to see if I missed a call, if somebody was texting me. And, there were a number of conversations that happened in between. But when I stopped working, I didn't know what was next. I had no clue. I just knew I needed out and I had to figure it out. And I did a lot of time thinking and praying, searching and seeking, trying to figure out what the next was for me. And I did a vision board back in 2009. And on my vision board, I had put WOW. And at that time, it was Women of Worth. And then several years later, I added the D for And Destiny.
Okay.
And I spent time looking at that vision board for answers because that had provided a lot of guidance for me over the years. And I'd always thought that Women of Worth and Destiny would be like some outreach ministry. And it ended up melting, crafting, adjusting, pivoting into a business. I still consider it my way of serving. And it has shifted and moved a lot since its inception, right? Because when I did it, I had never planned to be an entrepreneur. I was like, oh no, y'all can have that. I just need to go somewhere where I know what the expectations are, what the rules are, who the players are, and that's what I'm going to do. And then here we are, where I was like, you know what? I'm tired of doing great work and allowing other people to profit off of my back. Right? Like, I'm really smart. I can figure this out, right? I should be able to figure out how to own and operate my own business, to be able to provide for my family and to be able to have financial freedom and be able to live the kind of life that I want to live, take the kinds of clients that I want to take, and have control over my life. And so health and wellness has always been very important to me. And so that's what WOWD Center for Wellness is about. It is about strengthening, healing, and empowering women through self-care, powerful self-care that has the ability to help shift energy, move energy, that is really restorative, that helps you to rebalance and find harmony within yourself, the ability to connect with yourself on a level that when you're just going every single day, it can be really difficult to do. And so it is about creating this sacred space for women to be able to come into in order to be able to do that.
Okay. So what are some of the services or things that you offer for your clients?
Yeah, sure. So just about everything is related to some kind of healing touch, movement of energy, and connection with self that allows for greater connection to who or whatever you determine to be higher power.
Mhm.
So I offer Thai foot massage, which helps release stagnant energy in the feet and in the legs that is deeply relaxing and calming. I offer Thai yoga massage, which is a massage of the entire body using some massage techniques by guiding people into yoga positions, using some kneading, stretching, and things like that, that again helps to reestablish balance of energy in the body, but also helps to bring about a deep sense of calm and relaxation. I teach private yoga sessions. I still have some small group classes that I do virtually. I offer opportunities to participate in rituals. I practice Reiki, which again is all about energy, and is very powerful, can cause or help support some powerful shifts in a person's life and in a person's body. And I'm sure there are a couple of other things that I do that I have forgotten to mention, but that's it in a nutshell.
So with everything that you offer with this, pandemic and everything, has your business gone up? Because I'm sure and I know sometimes it sounds bad, but with all of the parents staying home with their children for school and everything, you know, they need that release. Has your business gone up, or how has it been?
It has increased, but and it's a valid point to say. For me, I was in year two, I think, year two maybe at the start of the pandemic.
Mhm.
And I'm going into year three, or maybe I was in year three, whatever it is. So I was slowly climbing at the time. There was an abrupt halt practically to my business because everything is touch, right? Everything is in person. And I had to do what every other entrepreneur had to do, which was to figure it out and to pivot. And so I pivoted such that all of my yoga classes were online. I started doing some privates online as well. And then I started providing Reiki services, distant Reiki services online. And the things that I could do, I did. I had opportunities to work with different groups, offering meditations,
Mhm.
offering yoga practices to support women during COVID times. And that was very helpful. And as we became more knowledgeable about the disease and as we were able to begin opening again, then I had to make pivots so that I could do in-person services. So following COVID precautions like wearing a mask and sanitizing, those kinds of things, COVID waivers, all of those things have now become a part of my business.
Have you found it to be difficult, doing a session with the mask and everything? Because I know when I have to go to work, having the mask on for 4 or 5, even 8 hours is a bit much of. So being that you're, doing these services, whether it's yoga, meditation, has it been a struggle or an adjustment, having to use the mask all of the time because of the protocols and everything?
It's an adjustment. It has been an adjustment, but it is what it is. Like for me, there's no point in dwelling on
Mhm.
it or bemoaning it or lamenting about it because it is like I'm that part isn't going to change. And it is absolutely important to me to protect myself and to protect my clients. And so it's not going to get to the point where I'm just like, oh, forget this. Let's take off these masks, bump that. But it just is, right? And so we've been doing it for almost a year now. And for me, it's become, part of this is just how we live right now.
Okay. So then So for when, people see this, your classes and everything, they're just for women or?
So primarily, yes, I would say 99%, everything is for women, right? Yeah, I would, if there was an opportunity for me to work on a couple, I would work on a couple. I do have one yoga class that is for men. It's on Tuesdays at 10:30. It's a chair class that helps with some stretching and some flexibility, but also some strengthening depending on what your age range is. That's the only class that I offer for men. Before the pandemic, when I worked in senior centers and I worked at a gym, there were men that were present because that wasn't necessarily my business. I was more of a contractor.
Okay.
But for Women of Worth and Destiny, yeah, that is primarily for women. If there's an opportunity and say, like I said, a husband and a wife or a boyfriend and girlfriend, a couple, they want to get some tandem services, yeah, I would absolutely do that.
So I know you said that, during your pharmacy time and correct me, please, that you stepped over into ministry.
So I received my calling to ministry while I was working in end of life care and pharmacy. Yep.
Okay, so do you incorporate that into into WOWD, or is that something that, unless asked for, you don't really incorporate it into your sessions?
So it shows up in different ways. Alessandra's spirituality in 2000, in the early 2000s, is different from her spirituality journey now. I was, I guess you could say I was a staunch Christian in the early 2000s. That was it. Nothing. Everybody else was going to hell as far as I knew and understood. Alessandra's spirituality in 2021 looks very different. I came to faith, came to understand God through Christianity, but I also see and find and believe truths in other religions and other forms of spirituality. And I have a very strong desire to be more connected to some of the spiritual paths that originate out of Africa. And so over the next couple of years, I'm really looking forward to developing my knowledge, understanding, and my sense of spirit from that perspective. And so to answer your question, the spiritual part of me always is at play, right? That is just the core of who I am. Now, does it necessarily show up with me just spouting some things out? No. It depends on who's present, and it depends on what I discern may be needed, or what my intuition is guiding me and leading me to do in a particular moment or in a particular class.
So then at times, do you offer any services around, well, not necessarily with the WOWD piece, but with your calling and everything? Do you do anything with that, as far as, maybe like a couples retreat, via Zoom or anything like that? Or is that something that's personal, that's for you and your husband, as far as the spiritual and your calling and everything goes?
Um, some things are personal. The ways in which I engage it now are very different. I'm certainly not active in any particular church in a quote unquote ministry in that way. But like I said, it always has been, and more than likely always will be, integral to who I am in the ways in which I move in the world. And so am I out doing weddings? No, but if somebody called me and said, hey, can you do my wedding? Yeah, sure, I can do that. If somebody asked me to do a eulogy for a loved one, yeah, I can do that. Right? Because that, for me, those pieces have not left me. It's just that I have a much broader view of the ways in which I see the world and the ways in which I see how God works and the ways in which God manifests. And now I have a broader view of how I understand Christian scriptures.
Okay. Okay.
Does that
So,
make sense?
no, it makes sense. It makes sense. It popped into my head, and I said, let me ask this question before it disappears.
Yeah.
Um, so then I have another question. It's still on topic, but a little bit off base. So I understand you said that you're an AKA.
Mm-hmm.
So, and and I have to ask this question because it popped into my head earlier today, and I said I have to ask. So with you starting WOWD and you pledging, what was harder?
But that's a fair question. They're very different. They're very different. They both have challenges and they both have great reward. And they're different, and they were at different times of my life, right? So when I pledged, I was a sophomore. I was only 19, fall of 94. Whereas when I started WOWD, I was 43,
Mm-hmm.
43, 44, 43. So we're talking over 20 years of time, and so now, like, 46-year-old Alessandra looking back at 19-year-old Alessandra, like, girl, please, that ain't nothing. But at 19, that's a big deal. Mm-hmm. Right? That experience is very rich and met with challenges and excitement and not knowing. And the 19-year-old Alessandra might speak to the 46-year-old Alessandra to be like, girl, you got that. What you talking about? Yeah. You're well prepared and well equipped to be able to do that. So I can't say that one is easier or harder than the other because they were at different points of my life.
Okay. It came into my head, and because I was doing my research, I said, let me make sure, I have something that when that popped up, I said, I think this would be an interesting question to ask. So has there, and I know we all go through it, and the question I'm getting ready to ask, has there been any point to where with I'll just say with WOWD, where you were just like, you know what, I just can't. And the reason I ask that is I know, like, with this podcast, for me it's been, and I'm learning as I go. So for me, it's been times where I was just like, editing. I don't want to edit. You know what? This takes too long. I don't want to do this. And, just ready to drop it all. But then, like you said, when you feel that something is your calling or your purpose, which I feel that this podcast is for me, is, to help people from all walks of life, and, interviewing you and, other people that I've interviewed. Has there been a time where you just wanted to throw your hands up and walk away from it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially in the beginning, because I did not know what in the world I was doing. Like I said, I had always worked for somebody else. Mm. And so I knew what the expectations were. I knew what I needed to do. And there was a framework that was already provided. So I knew how to work in the framework. Mm-hmm. Having to create my own completely from scratch when I wasn't even really sure about what I wanted this business to be. Man, when I tell you there were some rough times, I am so grateful for my sister because she is an entrepreneur as well. She does two things. She works a full-time job as an engineer, and she also has her own photography business that she's had maybe for over 10 years now. And so she was very encouraging and held my hand along the way and still continues to hold my hand. I'm grateful to have different people in my life that have said, girl, just hold on, just keep plugging away, because it can be very challenging. And in this particular field, I should say, when I started this, I had only practiced yoga, right? I had never thought, oh, I'll become a yoga instructor. or I'll learn how to do this. I'll learn how to do that. These are not skills that I've been practicing nearly as long as I've been practicing pharmacy.
Okay.
So I learned new skills. I developed new passions, new loves. Not only the skill of being a holistic practitioner and getting new certifications, there are skills that I had to learn with respect to business and that I continue to learn. The number of days that I have where I think I'm throwing in the towel, this is some BS right here, are far less now than they were. Do I know that there are still going to be challenging days? Absolutely. But is this completely worth it? Yes. Do I still believe this is purpose, calling, and destiny for me? Absolutely. Like when I sit at my desk, I often smile, and I am learning. Like I've had to learn some really tough lessons, and I've had to learn not to compare myself to other women that are doing a similar kind of work. Mm-hmm. Additionally, and I'm still learning this, I am learning how to be authentically happy and express authentic joy when I see women in the similar space with great success, right? Because there is something that happens in the shift of energy mm-hmm. when I am authentically joyful for them. And I'm not thinking, man, how she do that?
Yeah, exactly.
But when I'm like, girl, you better do that. I'm so happy for you. I'm so excited for you. Mm-hmm. There is a shift in my own energy, right? Because it's not a sense of pity. It's not a thing of, there's not a feeling of competition, because there's more than enough out here for mm-hmm. all of us. We have different areas of expertise. We have different focal points and different audiences. And yes, there may be some overlap, but you know, as much as I hate this saying, what is for you is for you, and what is for me is for me, mm-hmm. there is truth in that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, that's growth. And you know, that's what I try to explain to people. And I think it's both because we're both Aquariuses. I think that's just a trait that we have. Mm-hmm. I'm the same way. I don't look at somebody else's success and feel challenged by it. If they're doing something better than I'm doing, it's okay. I need to figure out how they got to that level, whether it's asking a question, because I'm not afraid to ask a question, or mm-hmm. you know, feel like, all right, if I ask him or her a question, I'm gonna feel like less of a person, because they're doing something that I'm not doing that got them to where they are. So I think that's an Aquarius trait that more people need to pick up on.
Well, you know what? That's actually a trait that I am still learning, because so I'll tell you a story. When I was a little girl, obviously I'm a dark brown skin girl. And so when I was a little girl, I used to get teased a lot about being dark skinned. Mm-hmm. And so I never felt pretty. I was like, oh, I made the decision, okay, if I can't be pretty, I'm going to be smart. I'm going to be the smartest person in all of my classes. And by and large, I usually felt like I was the smartest person, and not in an obnoxious way, mm-hmm. Not in a make other people feel not smart kind of way, but it was my mission to be smart, because if I couldn't be pretty, damn it, I was going to be smart. Mm-hmm. And so when I was in pharmacy, I knew what I was doing, right? Like you couldn't tell me anything. Like, and if I didn't know something, I knew exactly where to go. I knew the questions to ask. I knew the people that I needed to ask those questions. When I shifted into this space, like it was a big hit to my ego, huge hit to my ego. Like I did not like not knowing things. Mm-hmm. And so I've had to grow into the space of being okay with not knowing everything. And I am still learning the art and the skill of asking for what I need, and asking questions of people that have been doing this longer, that have garnered success. And you know, success is relative, yeah. But to say, how are you doing it? Mm-hmm. Right? So that like there's no reason for me just to struggle for struggle's sake because of ego and pride.
Yeah.
So I've really had to learn how to put those things down. And by and large, I would have said before this that I was not a prideful person, and I did not have a large ego. But it's funny how things show up, right? And how you get to see yourself and have an opportunity to learn and to grow and to say, yeah, you know what, girl, you do have a little bit of ego that you need to work on, right? You have some opportunities for growth. And so I guess I say all of that to say that this entrepreneurial journey has really opened doors for me to, number one, grow as a human being, to grow as a woman, and to do this thing that I love, to make a difference in the lives of women, extending the vision and the mission of WOWD.
I agree. I mean, we all have it. I don't care, who you are. We all have that sense of pride and stubbornness, or it's just like, I'm going to figure this out. And, we'll just keep bumping our heads until, we hit that point where it's just like, all right, now, it hurts now. Now I have to ask that question just
Right.
so I don't bump my head anymore.
Right. Let me get over myself.
Yeah. Yeah. So with everything that you do, what's one thing that you can give the listeners or the viewers when they see this, um, in terms of something that they can do at home for for self-care, um, especially with the pandemic going on and a new stress that's going to be thrown into the mixes. They're getting ready to open schools and things again. So what's, if you don't mind, what tip can you give, I guess, a parent, a mother, whoever, someone listening to this, how to deal with, I guess the stress or anxiety that's going to come along with everything that we're getting ready to run into with the opening of schools and things.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. I think there would be two things that I would offer. I'm not going to tell you to create this really elaborate self-care practice where you get up early in the morning or you're doing all of these things throughout the day, because the truth of the matter is that can be really difficult for some people, and that may not be realistic. But what I would say, is to try to make it a point to do something for yourself every day and be consistent with that thing. And it doesn't have to be going out for a 30-minute run or doing an hour yoga practice or going to the gym. It can be as short as taking 5 minutes for yourself, maybe before the rest of the house gets up. Mm-hmm. Maybe at your scheduled lunchtime, carving out a time for yourself that you put onto your calendar so that there are no interruptions, turning off your phone, turning off your computer, letting the kids know, the family know, whatever, to the best that you're able to, even if it's just closing a door for 5 minutes. And in those 5 minutes, maybe you do nothing but breathe. And it's funny because I was just saying this to my class today, and I don't think I've ever said it like this: breathe on purpose, with purpose, and for purpose. So taking really deep breaths, because when you focus on your breath, it forces you to be present in this moment. It's hard to think about breathing and also think about what you're doing in the next 10 minutes, right? It's hard to think about the future, and it's hard to think about the past. But when you take a moment just to breathe, and to breathe deeply in such a way that it's almost like, if you imagine, let's just take my water bottle, and you can see that it's almost full, but imagine it was full to the top. Visualize this as your torso, right? As you take a deep breath, imagine filling your torso from the very bottom, where the base of your belly is, all the way up to the very tops of your lungs. And then as you exhale, releasing all of that breath all the way back down. Doing that can be very powerful for us. It helps us to come into ourselves. It helps us to relieve stress and anxiety. It helps us to be present. It helps us to invite breath deeply into our body. It helps us to feel grounded. So when we feel like we're all over the place, it helps us to just kind of settle in and ground ourselves. And if you can do that, even if you don't have 5 minutes, what if it's just 1 minute? You carve out from 12 p.m. to 12:01 p.m., shut your door for 1 minute, 30 seconds, whatever it is, and take that time to breathe deeply. And that's what I would offer.
That's great advice because, like you said, I think until we hear it from someone in your position, to say, focus on your breath, breathing it out with a purpose and all those types of things. I don't think we take much stock in that. It's just, we sort of take it for granted, like, I'm going to do it anyway. But then when you, like you said, when you put purpose behind it, give yourself that time to care for you.
Yeah.
I think I tell people that all of the time, and sometimes it's misunderstood. And I know at times I could come off a bit rough or a-hole-ish. I'll say that. But I always tell people, I said, if you have to take care of you. I said, what good are you to someone else if you're not good?
Yeah.
And I told them, I said, it sounds weird coming from, hearing it out loud. But I told them, I said, yeah, sometimes you have to, and not in the traditional definition of it, but at times you have to ignore the kids. You have to ignore your spouse just to get yourself back together. Because I tell my wife, when we talk and, she may be freaking out, I'll tell her, like, look, you got to keep it together. Take a minute, go in the room, go for a walk, go for a drive, go sit in the tub and relax. I'll take care of the kids, but you keep you together. Because I always tell her, I said, if you fall apart, or if I'm falling apart and you're falling apart with me, I said, that's not going to help. You have to take care of you, ignore the kids, ignore the dog, like I said, 5-10 minutes, whatever you can get, and, recharge yourself.
Yeah.
And
And I think that there is a misunderstanding about the power of self-care. And so when I talk about self-care, I am always talking about it from a perspective of doing something that nurtures you, that nourishes you, that has the ability to transform you. And it creates an opportunity for you to take your cape off, right? Because the expectation that, and I'll speak from a Black woman's perspective, that we're supposed to show up strong and powerful all the time, that in and of itself is overwhelming.
Yes.
Right? Like, we're supposed to be the strong one. Well, why do I have to be the strong one? Right? And so we deserve the opportunity to be able to care for ourselves in the ways in which we need to, so that we can show up in the world the way that we want to show up in the world. Not in a way that's defined by society, defined by our loved ones, or defined by anybody except for us. And so real self-care allows you to be able to begin to roll a lot of that back. And real self-care allows for this really powerful growth to happen within you. And sometimes that growth begins to look like, no, no, thank you. No, I can't do that today. Nope. Maybe next week. And creating boundaries for yourself, so that you begin to consistently prioritize yourself. It can sound cliche, it can sound harsh to say that, or selfish to say that I am going to take care of myself first. And it's none of those things. It truly is a radical act to put yourself first, so that you can, it's what Women in Worth and Destiny is all about. You value yourself, you see your worth, and then you're able to walk into your destiny. You can't walk in destiny when you don't know your worth and your value. Yeah. It's difficult to walk in the fullness of destiny when you broke down because you're not taking care of yourself. Ain't nobody else gonna do it for you. And if you don't do it for yourself, then you just might die for yourself and because of yourself. And so it's so critical for us to make it a priority. And I say sometimes you got to pay for good self-care. Sometimes you got to sacrifice for good self-care. And until we are willing to do some of those things, no, you don't have to spend money on self-care all the time. But then sometimes you're going to find out that yeah, you know what, if you really want to get what you're really going for in that, then you may have to pay some money. You're going to have to make a commitment to do it consistently to be able to see results, right? Because we're in the microwave society where we want something just like that. And change, no matter what it is, doesn't happen just like that. You're going to have to commit to, if it's going to the gym because you want to lose weight, you're going to have to commit to getting that workout in with frequency and commit to making the changes in your diet. If you want to shift the energy so that you're not always feeling overwhelmed or whatever it is, you're going to have to commit to getting that Thai foot massage or the Thai yoga massage or your yoga practice or going to therapy or whatever it is consistently, not sporadically, but doing it on a regular basis, putting it on your calendar just like you put everything else.
Yeah. So people, when you hear this, when you hear invest in yourself, it does not only mean in your business or something that you're trying to do. Invest in yourself means really invest in yourself, your body, your health, your mental, all of those good things. So before we wrap, how can the people get in touch with you to take advantage of your WOWD service?
So I am on Instagram and Facebook. You can find me at the handle WOWD Wellness, WOWD Wellness. You can go to my website at wowdwellness.com. And my email address is wowdwellness@gmail.com.
Okay. Well, again, I thank you for joining me this evening. We've been trying to set this up for a minute, and we finally got it in. So again, I appreciate you coming on and giving the great advice that you gave my guest tonight. And I want to look forward to having you back again sometime when you write your book or
Oh, we speaking that into existence, huh?
we put it out there into the atmosphere.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you and to have these really important conversations and to be able to share what it is that I love, what I'm passionate about, and to be part of National Women's Month in March. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Not a problem at all. Look forward to speaking with you again. And, we need to talk 23. This is a wrap for this episode. Thank you again.